welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Today, you are going to meet Harris Orkin. And let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a novelist, he's a screenwriter, he's a playwright, he's a WGA and BAFTA award nominated game writer. So this man is like, he's a creator. He's a creator, that's what he is. And he's the author of 3 novels. Wait till you hear the titles of these books. I read every James Bond book there is. So this just caught my eye, and I just said, Harris, you have to be on my show. So, he has created a character called James Flynn, which you will hear all about. And he wrote, You Only Live Once, Once Is Not Enough, and his newest, which just launches in a couple of days, June 23rd, is called Goldhammer. Is that cool? Welcome, Harris.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you bringing me on. I'm glad you're a big Ian Fleming fan too. That would make you appreciate the books that much more, I think. So yeah.
I think that's true. I could tell just by the names, right?
Yeah.
So before we jump into the novels and the whole series, which we want to explore, tell me a little bit about your gaming life.
So I've always kind of liked playing video games. When they first, when I was in college, they weren't actually invented yet. The only games you saw were maybe like in bars, like, Donkey Kong and those kind of things. But when my son turned 13, 11, and he started playing video games, I would play video games with him. So my wife now accuses me of wanting to have a child just so I had someone to play video games with. So we would play, and I would see that the writing and the voice acting on the games was pretty terrible. This was like in the mid 90s. And I had worked as a screenwriter and playwright, and I worked as a voice director too for animation and commercials. And I just thought that might be a good area for me to explore. So I started going to video game conventions like E3, which is in LA, so it was close. And I just started trying to network with people. And I actually met someone who wrote a video game. I got really good at this one game called Soldier of Fortune 2. I got really good because my son would always kick my butt when we played games. And so he'd go to bed and I'd stay up late and just practice. So I could though I still never was able to actually get better than him. But I got really good at this one game, and I was one of the top 100 players in the world. And I got recruited by this clan to play, these online tournaments. And I met the guy who wrote the game and the creators of the game, and they found out I was a screenwriter, and we decided to trade information. I told him I would give him contacts in screenwriting if he would introduce me to people who make video games. And so we did that, and I ended up taking all these different people out to lunch just to pick their brains about how video games work and how they're written. And eventually I was hired by Atari to write a game for them. And I was hired by Disney and EA, and I started writing video games, and it just worked out. I started going to conventions where I'd meet more game developers, and I just developed a reputation as someone who knew how to do it. Plus, I was able to cast and direct the actors, so I could do the whole thing for them.
So fun. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Storytelling is storytelling, though, isn't it?
It is. And games are very sophisticated now. I mean, over the course of 20 years, they've gone from pretty simple to now they're like interactive movies. I mean, they're full-on movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so when you think about your screenwriting life and your playwriting life and your game writing life and your novel writing life, which gives you the most joy?
I gotta say, like you said, storytelling is storytelling, and I kind of like all the different mediums. The thing I like about writing novels is it's just all me. I don't have to rely on anyone else. and I can just do everything, and I really like that. And I don't have to compromise anything because, I'm working on a game that's like $25 million game. They're going to, they're going to have a lot of input, the developers and the publisher. And, there's only so much I can do that's completely on my own. And it's also very collaborative, which that's one of the things I like about it, though. I like the fact that when you're writing novels, you're by yourself all the time and you can get kind of lonely. So when I work on games, I'm collaborating with a big team of people, and usually the teams I work with companies all over the world. I'm working right now on a game with a company in China, one in Japan, one in Sweden, and one in Poland. So it's amazing, really. Yeah.
So cool. It's so cool. All right, we got to get into these books. We got to get into this series and James Flynn.
Right.
Just the titles alone are enough to get you guys out there to go buy these books. So tell me a little bit about James Flynn and how the series came about, and then a little bit more about book number 3.
Okay. Well, it's the series idea. Actually, I wrote it as a screenplay when I was working as a screenwriter. I would write spec screenplays, and I had some success for a number of years writing and selling spec screenplays. And for a certain period of time in Hollywood when you could do that, though it was still difficult. It took me 7 years before I sold my first screenplay. And so I wrote the first Flynn book is basically the story in the screenplay, and I just loved it. And I optioned it a couple times, and but it never got made. And I always loved the character and the story, and the impulse for it was I was a big fan of Don Quixote. I was just always loved. I remember reading the book in high school, and I saw Man of La Mancha, and something about that just I don't know, just really excited me. The idea of someone, being a hero in their fantasies, right? And so I was thinking about how would you do a modern day Don Quixote? And I was thinking, well, what would be the equivalent of a knight errant in today's world? And I was like, from the time I was like 10, I was reading all the James Bond novels. And to me, it was like, it's James Bond. He is like the person who travels around and constantly saves the world. And but even I got to say, even as a teenager and then going into getting older, I realized how ridiculous James Bond was. There was just something really kind of ridiculous about him, because first of all, he's the worst secret agent ever. Everyone knows who he is. I mean, how secret is that, right?
Everybody, right?
And he tells everybody who he is, even if they don't know, he tells them. And he never really investigates anything. He just kind of blunders into stuff and gets captured by the bad guy and somehow saves the day in the end. So I thought, well, that seems ridiculous. But so that combined with Don Quixote gave me the idea that a mental patient in a hospital in Pasadena might believe, if he is like a modern day Don Quixote, he might believe he is actually in Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that everyone in the hospital is part of the service, and that the hospital is just the cover story because they want to keep people from knowing that it's an office of Her Majesty's Secret Service. So he sees a psychiatrist and he calls him N, and the psychiatrist has a receptionist who he call Miss Honeywell, who is like so I kind of made the parallels. And in the first book, what happens, the hospital gets taken over by a new HMO, and some of the patients get let go because all of a sudden they weren't, their stay there wasn't being paid for. And Flynn and the person, his psychiatrist, N, ends up leaving as well when that changes hands. And Flynn believes someone has taken control of the Secret Service and infiltrated it, and decides he needs to escape and rescue N and these other, he doesn't realize they're patients who got removed from the hospital. And he carjacks an orderly he's friends with. His name is Sancho. And, he becomes his Sancho Panza. And so Flynn goes out into the world to try to find, and he ends up running into a real situation with a real kind of supervillain who has this like kind of insane plan to, I'm not gonna give too much away.
Yeah, don't give too much away.
But but to me, what was interesting about it is that everyone is living in their own delusional bubble to some extent. All of us, honestly,
Especially us writers.
right, exactly. And then just look at the world, look at politics and everything. Everyone is just in their own delusional bubble about how they think the world is. And so, right, yeah. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any agreement on actual facts or reality anymore, really. So to me, like the supervillain in this is just someone else living in their own delusional bubble, and in the Bond movies and books, Bond would always tell these supervillains like Dr. No or Blofeld that they're out of their minds. You are completely crazy, and so in this case, they are kind of crazy. And so is truth was, Bond was always crazy
James
too.
Flynn.
Right, exactly. James Flynn is crazy, and honestly, Bond was a little bit crazy if you think about it, the things he would do, right? So
this is so cool. You've got me so intrigued.
yeah.
What an interesting and wonderful premise. That is awesome. So is there going to be a number 4?
There is, yeah. I'm actually working with the editor right now on the 4th one. And so I'll hope be done with that by the time the 3rd one, Goldhammer, comes out in June. So yeah, I don't know how much I should give away of the premises. In each case, it's always a surprise. What's that?
I think you've intrigued everybody.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes, I think you've done an excellent job. You certainly have intrigued me. So you've done a great job. So when you're reading, because this is, what are you reading? What are you writing?
Right.
So what do you like? What do you enjoy reading that you might recommend to our audience?
Well, I'm very eclectic in my tastes, really. But I like thrillers, like Don Winslow I love his writing, and I like his thrillers. He wrote The Power of the Dog. He just recently, let's see if I think I wrote it down. Just recently came out with a book called Broken, which is a group of novellas. And he just has a lot of humor in some of his writing. And I like books with humor. I like James Lee Burke's Dave Robichaux books, which doesn't necessarily have a lot of humor, but they're just really well written. I don't know if you've read him. He's a really great mystery writer. And John Connolly, who writes, writes the Charlie Parker novels, which are kind of have some paranormal elements, which I really like those. Yeah. And Michael Connolly, and
the great Bosch.
Yes, I like his stuff too. And I like comic novelists, so I read, I like Elmore Leonard's more comic novels. That was really an inspiration.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Like Get Shorty
and they make you laugh, and their ridiculousness, and they're so well written. He's such a spare and excellent writer.
Yeah.
And they turned into great movies too.
They do, yeah. Carl Hiaasen's another one I like, another writer who's writes contemporary comic thrillers. It's a small genre, actually. There aren't many people who write those. So it was a challenge initially getting published, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it probably isn't hard to get it published. I bet it's just hard to write. You obviously have it not, but
you know what? It's just it's kind of how it comes out of me, right? It's like, I don't know if I could write a serious thriller. I think there's some part of me that I love all those thrillers. There's something about that seems somewhat ridiculous to me, and I just can't help but see that. And when I'm writing it, it just kind of, though I play them pretty straight. The Flynn books are, I try to ground it in reality. So everything feels really, the idea is that for everything to feel really believable. It's just this kind of insane person in the midst of all this creates a lot of humor. So
yeah, the premise just by itself is humorous. Yeah, that is so good.
Yeah.
This has been so fun speaking with you, Harris. This has been just such a good conversation. And I really look forward to your new book coming that's out in June. And so if people wanted to find you, they wanted to interact with you somewhere, or they wanted to read your books, like how can they find you on the internet?
Oh, well, probably the easiest place is my website, which is just harrisorkin.com. And it's Harris with one R. There's a long story with that. My name legally has two R's, but my mom told me it was spelled with one R. And I didn't realize until I got my passport, when I looked at my birth certificate, that I saw that I had two R's in my name. And I have no idea why she told me that. But and now, and she had no good reason either, honestly. So
Harris Orkin, Orkin.
Right, Harris with one
.com.
R. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter as well, at Harris Orkin, but I'm probably the most information you'll find is on the website. So
Excellent. So I hope all of you will check him out and check out his books. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I obviously did. And I hope that we will see you next time on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Thanks, everybody.